This episode is presented by Folds of Honor. Folds of Honor provides educational scholarships to the families of fallen or disabled military service members and first responders. To support Folds of Honor, visit foldsofhonor.org. Every contribution helps provide scholarships for children and spouses of fallen and disabled veterans and first responders. Oh, how I love the story that I am about to share with you today, just in time for Christmas. Elf on a Shelf is a beloved holiday tradition now in 28 million homes worldwide. Unbelievable. And it all started with a mom who wanted to create a little extra wonder and magic around the holidays for her own children. Chanda Bell and her siblings were the recipients of the magic, and now Chanda and her sister are CEOs of the Lumistella Company, home to Elf on a Shelf. This is such an inspiring story of humble beginnings, a big leap of faith, motherhood, and a little magic. Merry Christmas, everyone. Well, Chanda, I'm so happy to get to meet you and get to talk to you, especially this time of year. And I can just imagine no more fun job. I know it's a lot of work, but the joy that you get to see other families get to experience because of what you experienced as a young girl. And I'm just super excited to hear the story.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Jennifer. I'm so excited to be here, to be on the podcast, to share my story and talk a little bit about what I got from my mama.
Absolutely. That's one of the things that really drew me to the story is the fact that all of this started with your mama wanting to create some wonder and some magic. And then I was thinking about how now what she did, her efforts as a mom when you were growing up, brings joy to so many other families and other moms who are looking for a creative way to bring that same wonder and magic into their families. That's just incredibly special.
It really is. I'm very excited to talk about it because it's a huge part of our story. And usually interviews are just so short, you don't really get much time to share that kind of part of our story. So I'm looking forward to this. Thanks.
Well, take me back to your childhood. What do you remember about what your mom did do to create magic in the home?
So what I remember about my childhood, we had a very modest upbringing. It was rural South Georgia at the time, or, actually North Georgia. At the time, but it is not rural anymore, right? It's 4 and 6 and 8 lane highways. But at the time, it was little 2 lane roads. And, I was a child of the 70s, right? So you had your play clothes and you had your school clothes and you put patches on your jeans. And, it was just a modest upbringing. You spent a lot of time playing outside. My mom was a very active stay-at-home mom. I remember a lot of my memories of her are in the kitchen, cooking all the meals, ironing. I feel like she did a lot of ironing, which who even has to do that anymore? But she did a lot of ironing and house. But the one time of year where my parents really made an effort to spend money that we typically would not spend the rest of the year and to create something just really special for us was our birthdays and Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was just a huge part of, anticipation, excitement. If you ask for something, it was well, let's wait till Christmas. I had a twin sister and a younger brother, and it was a, single family income because my dad was working, my mom was home. But specifically at the holidays, just really my parents, both of them working very hard to make it really special, really memorable. We would go cut our tree down in a lot, street. I remember one year we tried to string popcorn. And by the way, that takes a really long time. And
I did that one time with my kids.
Yes.
I'm not sure we completed a strand.
Exactly.
I'm over this.
Yes, it's super hard. It's super hard. I think we had the exact same experience. Cranberries is probably a better choice.
Yeah, exactly.
If you want to do a family activity. And so...
Did you have an elf? Did your mom have this thing that she
did? Yeah, so that's what I was about to say. But the big sort of standout for Christmas for us was the Elf on the Shelf. And again, it was from Thanksgiving to Christmas. It was 30-ish days of magic. And my mom would tell us that the elf was watching for Santa and that when it flew back to the North Pole, it was going to talk to him and tell him, what he saw. And then in the morning before we woke up, the elf had flown back from the North Pole and landed in a different spot in our house. And we would race out of bed to be the first person to find the elf. And then, just great memories of talking to the elf and telling the elf what I wanted for Christmas and, you know, reminding the elf how good I had been over my siblings. And so I think for me, the real blessing of what I do today is that I know how kids experience this and I
Mhm.
know the memories that they are making and how they translate as an adult. And it is still like the most magical. I had Christmas morning every day for 30 days.
Oh, that's so special. What was the name of your elf?
So our elf was Fizby.
Thisbe?
Fizby. I have
Oh,
no
how
idea
cute.
how he came up with that, but that's what we called him.
And you referred to your elf as the elf on the shelf. Is that what you guys actually called it growing up, or that was more when once the business side came in?
That's right. So really it was just, a family tradition that my mom began with us based on an elf from her own childhood. But it didn't become the elf on the shelf until my mom and I sat down to write this story based on our own family tradition and
Right.
wrote what the elf on the shelf has become today.
So, the question I was thinking about as you talked about your stay at home mom who cooked and ironed and really provided this traditional, classic, dreamy childhood, could you have ever, as a young girl, imagined your mom as in the corporate world as the head of this amazing company?
No, I don't think so. I don't think I would have ever seen my mom that way. My mom was really talented. Her background was as a school music teacher. And
Oh,
so she did step to the forefront, right, to like direct the school play and things like that. She was always like the room mom. So I remember her being very active in that way, but I don't think I and or she would have ever imagined that we would end up starting and running a business together.
yeah, that's amazing. So let's fast forward from your childhood to the point where you or whoever it was in your amazing family of these women had this idea that we could actually commercialize this magic and provide it for other people. Tell me about just kind of the concept and the idea and how that got going.
Well, I don't think we ever dreamed that it would become what it has today. We knew we had a magical family tradition because we had lived it and it was just so much fun for us. We certainly did not think we were setting out to start a business. So the truth really behind the whole story is that my mom was actually dealing with a lot of health issues and some depression and just having a very, very difficult time. I had just become a mom for the first time and I was working for my dad 2 days a week. His office, he owned a small engineering fabrication firm, and his office was a good 2 hours away from where I lived. And that was one way without traffic. And I had an infant and I needed to bring him with me. And so it allowed me that flexibility. And so I would come work for my dad during the day. And at night, I would spend the night with my parents, with my son. And then the next day, I would work again and then I would finally head home. And it was during that time that I was spending the night with them that I looked and I saw our elf that we grew up with sitting on a shelf. And I just said to my mom, "Hey, mom, like we should write a story, about our elf." Between I was a former school teacher. So between me working for my dad and having my son, I had been a school teacher. And in that very slight gap, a couple years, I had started like doing some like writing on the side just for something to do for myself. So I had
Mhm.
done like a children's literature club and some things like that just to start to get my feet wet in this idea of like writing children's literature. And I had taught reading. So I knew the space well. And so it was that time I looked up and I'm like, I see our elf from our childhood sitting on a shelf. And I suggest to my mom that we should write this story based on our own experience. And that's what we started doing. So I would say for the next 6 to 8 months, when I would come spend the night over there at my parents' house after working for my dad, she and I would craft this story based on our family experience. And the whole reason I even proposed it was really to give my mom something, happy and joyful to think about, something for us to do together. And that was really the whole beginning of it. So it was never going to be like, let's start a business. Then we end up with this really cute story. And we sent out a proposal trying to get an agent because we bought a book and that told us what to do, right? And we did get a phone call from a literary agent, and we just thought that was amazing. And she takes it everywhere. I mean, mid-sized, the big guys, the little guys, and nobody wanted it. And so it's one of those things in life where it's like, okay, it's a good idea and that's all it will ever be, or we're going to have to do something with this. So this idea was floated, this idea of self-publishing. And of course, neither one of us had any idea what that meant. Neither one of us, really had any experience. My mom did serve as an editor for a short time at our church newspaper, like, and wrote the stories and all of that kind of stuff. And she also, at one point, when I went to college to help pay for college, she took a job in an advertising agency. So I think there were little sprinkles of, her experience that were going to lead to where we were. Certainly mine was in the education, reading, children's space. And so anyway, it was just like, okay, what do we do with this? It's just a good idea and that's all it will ever be, or we're going to have to take some leaps of faith.
I love hearing from those of you who have tried and love the Coat Defense Daily Preventative Powder that we use on Tucker, our golden retriever. There is nothing like this product in the stores, and let me tell you, it works. It truly is a game changer when it comes to keeping his coat clean and fresh. This powder acts as a dry shampoo on Tucker, and it repels dirt and eliminates odor. He stays cleaner and fresher, and I'm a happier dog mom thanks to Coat Defense. Try it out and let me know what you think. You can visit coatdefense.com and receive 15% off your purchase with the code MAMA15.
We didn't have any experience. We didn't know anybody with money. So it's like, how do we do this? And we just put one tiny foot in front of the other, learned what we needed to know, found an amazing watercolor artist that was local and believed in what we were doing, and basically just agreed to do this on a good idea and the promise of, if this ever makes anything,
Yeah.
we'll make sure to compensate you. And that's really how and there's so much there. There's credit card debt, and that really leads to sort of our story here. But those were the humble beginnings of
Yeah.
what would become the Lumistella Company, which is the owner of and the producer of the Elf on the Shelf, which I own today with my sister, myself, and my mom has since retired.
Oh my goodness, that's amazing. I love how just organic the story is. I mean, from what you experienced as a child to your efforts of wanting to bring joy to your mom during a valley that she was in. And then just thinking about the perseverance, the tenacity of like, we have a good idea. And I so identify with that of creating this podcast where I talk to mothers who inspire other people, or mothers who have really encouraged their kids' dreams. And now they have these big platforms of, I know it's a good idea, but what do we do with it? I think about you
Absolutely.
buying that book of how to publish a book, and I'm literally online going, how to start a podcast, like,
Yes,
it's
yes.
that I just identify with that so much. And I just love, what you've done with that. And it was also thinking, as you talked about, how it's so apparent to me that the Lord was preparing you for these steps, the little things of you teaching in school and having this background of your mom getting to be part of advertising, and then the way that you brought, or editing, and then the way that you guys brought all of those things together to create this. It's really special.
I love how you say that, because I'm a huge believer that all of these experiences that you might think are random are not.
Right.
Like, I one time took for an easy A in college, and by the way, it was not, it was super hard. I took a set design class, right? And it's one of the classes that in this line of work I have used more times. We have done stage shows. I have done animated specials that I wrote and produced. And so I have a really good sense of like where all the characters are, where to move the camera. Like, so, and at the time I thought it was just a random
Yeah, you
class.
could have never known when you were trying to get
Exactly.
that elective marked off of college credit, right? That
Exactly.
you would use that in this, huge way. So yeah,
Yeah. So
and I
I
want to
feel
talk
like,
about all of those things, the derivatives of what this elf and this sweet children's book came to be. I mean, I got to see, I mean, you literally walked in the Macy's Day Parade with your second Macy's Day Parade float, right?
yes, it was amazing. The balloon is gorgeous. It's amazing. So back to sort of your steps of faith, your leaps of faith. It's amazing where that will take you,
Yeah.
right? When you choose to be obedient and when you choose to um again, put it all out there and just do what you believe and know, that God is telling you to do. It's how I believe we're standing here 20 years later, because business ownership is not easy. It is hard. It is full of surprises, and it is people management and process management and, business management, change management, money management. It's all of these things.
Yeah.
Um, but at the core of all of it is our company's vision, mission, purpose, and values that drives us all forward. And we're just all really passionate about telling these stories of Santa's North Pole and creating joyful family moments for families.
Yeah. And it just continues to grow. Tell me about some of the latest initiatives with it. There's a whole Santaverse out there, right?
Yeah, so we just launched the Santaverse this year. And so it really came from, like, we are the voice of Santa Claus. Like, we get the letters, the phone calls, the emails, the social media, like it comes here, right? And we realized that what people really wanted from us was to just lift this veil of this magical world of the North Pole and answer all these questions for them. And not just answer them, but figure out how to make people's role an important part of how the North Pole operates. And while we had Elf on the Shelf as this amazing hero character, people were just seeking so much from us. Like, how does the sleigh fly around the world? And how does he travel the world in one night? And so we started introducing other characters, like our elf pets, for example, who really each of them imbues the value of faith, hope, and love. But they also answer a question for children. So it's, how does the sleigh fly? How does Santa land on rooftops? How does, he do travel the world in one night? They're all sort of based in these questions that kids have or want to know. How does the North Pole work? How's Santa really magical? So St. Bernard answers that story. So we hit sort of all of these questions kids have with hopefully using characters they love with values that parents love. But not everything was an elf on the shelf, right? So our reindeer was not an elf on the shelf. So it's like, okay, what do we do with this? So now we had all these disparate brands. We had Elf Mates, which are our sort of value-based alternative, but they have different jobs. They don't fly back and forth to Santa Claus. They are elves that Santa sends. They can cuddle with your kids, they can snuggle and all that kind of stuff, but their whole goal is to promote kindness. And they represent what I would say are like the three, I would say, sort of classic roles of elves. So toy makers, chefs, and cobblers, right? So we have all of these elf mates. And I'm like, well, that's not Elf on the Shelf. So what do we do with this? And so we ended up creating our endorsed brand name is what we call it, known as the Santaverse. And our goal and our hope is that when people see that, they understand it's stories from this world. It's related to the Elf on the Shelf and these other characters that they love, that it stands for, family values and integrity and great storytelling in this mythological world, this fantastical world of Santa and the North Pole through all of these characters and stories. And so next year, we're actually introducing our first ever chapter book for kids. We're super excited about that. I've been working on it for 5 or 6 years, but it goes all the way back to the history of Santa, right? How did he first meet the elves? Where does he come from? And, in my mind, I represent very much St. Nicholas, right? The spirit of Christmas and what he represents and generosity and kindness and all of those things. And so I'm really thankful to have a platform to tell all of those stories through the Santaverse.
Yeah, that's really amazing and exciting that it just, again, it keeps growing like this little idea and the way that, I mean, it's almost like it's endless in what you can do with it. And I love that you're really helping parents answer the tough questions too, all the ones
Yeah,
of,
right. I needed it myself. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. How did you incorporate the traditions in your own family as a mom? You've got kids, let's see, one is in college and one is out of college. Is that right?
All right, so you're close. So my
Okay.
son has graduated from college, but he went to graduate school. So he is studying economic analytics. So he will
Okay.
graduate next December. And my daughter is a freshman at Flagler in St. Augustine. And so we are empty nesters for the first time. Experiencing the joy and the magic of the Elf on the Shelf and the other traditions that we have created through the eyes of my kids. It's why we all do all the things, right? As parents, the sheer joy, the thrill on their faces, the magic of these memories. They would talk about the elf all year round, just like I did growing up. I mean,
Right.
you talk about it all year. My daughter was a huge lover of stuffed animals, and she I would go into her room and she would have her own little Christmas tree, and she would have all of her elf pets and any other Christmas character she could get her hands on, all around the little Christmas tree. And then that spurred her own imagination. And so getting to live all of these traditions and these moments that we create just as a mom,
Yeah.
um, outside of what I do, I think are some of my favorite memories of Christmas. And I hope my children feel the same way.
What are some of your personal favorite things that you have seen people do to be creative with the elf? I mean, the ideas that people come up with, if you go to Pinterest and type in elf on a shelf, I'm blown away at all of the ideas. What are some of the most creative or your personal favorites that you've seen?
Jennifer, I feel the same way you do. I look at this and I'm like, it's absolutely mind blowing what some parents, create for these magical moments. For my kids, our elf was rather simple. It flew back and forth from the North Pole and maybe every now and then had a little note or a little treat.
Which was the
And
original intention, right?
yeah, yeah. And for my kids, that was just as magical, right? They thought that was magical. They had a friend from the North Pole. But I also think, if you are a parent that is inclined to that, it gives you a creative outlet and you get to create these amazing memories for your children. And I am blown away by what I see. I mean, it is absolutely, it is mind boggling. I'm not sure I understand the messes quite as much. But some of the absolute creativity, I mean, I've seen elves flying in airplanes with clouds that say I love you behind it in the sky, like hanging from their ceiling. Like it is absolutely incredible and inspiring and creative to me. Like I just think it's absolutely incredible, the things that I have seen. I'm just like, wow, and people are sending me the videos and the TikToks and all, like,
Oh,
hey,
I bet.
and I continue to be amazed just like everyone else. I'm a fan too, right?
Yeah, yeah, and to get to see, what people have done with, what was relatively a small idea in the beginning.
Yeah.
And I mean, the efforts that parents go to is where I'm like, oh my goodness, how do you find the time? And then, of course, I'm sure you also hear from the moms who on about day 19 and 20 are like, oh, I'm out of ideas. I'm exhausted. Why did I start this? How do you
Well,
encourage them?
we have a really amazing engaged, like Facebook group, for example, where they get in there and they're asking each other all those types of questions. But for us, it's our job to also listen. And so when we're hearing that, we have an app for that, right? So we have an Elf Idea app. We have Elf kits that come with 25 days of prepackaged goodness, right? So we have elf props, we have elf clothes. So we really do our best to try to make it easy on parents that are looking for that kind of thing, especially if maybe you're a mom or dad that doesn't feel like you're that creative,
Yeah.
but you want to create those kind of moments for your children. So we do our very best to, make it as simple as possible. I've got 120 employees who all work for Santa, who love to be crafty and creative and come up with some of this stuff. It's really fun to watch for sure.
Yeah, that's fun. I feel like I've learned that the North Pole has an Atlanta branch,
Yes,
basically.
it does.
For sure. I know that one of the things that has also brought you joy personally is the ability to give back through the blessings that you guys have received. I'd love to hear more about like some of the ways that you've been able to do that. I know one of them is Folds of Honor, an organization that we love that you guys have been able to partner with as well.
I think, to whom much is given, right?
Mhm.
Much is required. And
Mhm.
so it is our philosophy as both the owners, my sister and I, as humans, right? It's our job as people who represent Santa Claus. Like, he's generous, right? He's generous of spirit. And so we think that's a huge part of what we do. We have one employee whose sole job is philanthropy. And she
Wow.
does an incredible job, not only finding us the right partners, but also honoring requests. We get thousands of requests for product or donations, children's groups, children's hospital. I mean, you name it. And so we have one employee, that's her whole job. So whether it's employee engagement on the staff, we have lots of volunteer opportunities that are available. Everyone is given a discretionary fund, a certain amount of money that the company provides for them to give away as they
Oh, I
see
love
fit.
that.
We have strategic partners, like you mentioned, Folds of Honor. We've done a lot of work with them over the years. We just actually recently had a speaker come in to talk to the staff about Folds of Honor. And then we did an amazing giveaway to the family members of those that are overseas. And so we just recently did that a couple months ago. Krista and I are both also really involved in boards. I sit on one board I'm very passionate about, and they actually have a site in Franklin, Tennessee. I know you mentioned Nashville, so it's right there, but they work, it's called Path United, and they work in mobile home park communities. And they go in, they provide, because a lot of it's heavy ESOL, right? So not a lot of English speaking, impoverished sort of communities. And when they first started, they would go in and buy a trailer in the property, and it becomes like homework help, spiritual development. And when they first started in these communities, there were 0 high school graduators. And now they are seeing kids actually go to college from these communities that they're involved with. The crime has dropped. It is a symbol of hope. These kids are graduating from high school and not necessarily repeating the cycle. And so as a literature lover, right, and a mom, I'm super passionate about that one. So yeah, I think it's really important to be generous and to have the opportunity to bless others when you've been blessed.
I love everything that you guys are about. I love the story, how it started, all of the things. That's incredible. So we know that a chapter book is coming. Anything else to tease or talk about, like as far as, I mean, not that you don't have enough on your plate over there. Those 120 employees are busy.
That's right. We are. We're super busy. Next year's promising to be a really big year for us. It's our 20th anniversary.
Oh, wow.
And if you had told me that I would still be sitting here 20 years later, I would not have believed you. I just didn't want to go to jail for the credit card debt I had incurred and how we started this whole little thing we had going on. It was selling it all out of the back of the car, and it was all we could do to get a website up. And we worked for free for 3 years. And there's a lot of times we still have to take risk and not make any money because we know it's the right thing for the company or the next steps. But next year is shaping up to be a really big year in celebrating our 20th anniversary. So hopefully internally and externally, people will see some really fun activations out there. But the chapter book is sort of a really new, exciting initiative for us. And will people be excited about the backstory of Santa Claus, when no one's ever really told that before?
Right.
In a chapter book, right? That really starts to answer sort of all these questions for kids and families. So hopefully they'll love it. And it's just the beginning of the endless storytelling universe.
I love the fact that you are the person writing the book. I mean, you guys could hire probably, the best of the best writers to help do all of this, but that you and your sister personally have a hand in every initiative with this is even makes the company even more special.
Oh, thank you. That's great. Again, we have amazing staff here, but I am passionate about the storytelling. It's what got us here. I just love this idea of Santa's whole world and who lives there and what they do. And as a kid, I can remember staring out the window and truly being the one that thought I was going to see that iconic moment of Santa flying across the moon. But I would just imagine, and I think a lot of that had to do with our own elf being in our home, right? What were his reports to Santa like every night? What was he saying? What did it look like there? Who all lived there? Did he have pets? Those were all questions I had as a child growing up, and was just fascinated with this idea of this man who traveled around the world and delivered joy and presents. And so getting a chance to, sort of be the chief storyteller for Santa Claus, it's a big responsibility, but it's also one I just absolutely cherish and love and enjoy and appreciate my mom for setting this up as an opportunity. At one point she homeschooled us because honestly, she didn't feel like we were learning how to write. And so I look back on that, I'm like, it was just 1 year, but man, it set me up for my career and my success. So
yeah. It's been so lovely to get to spend this morning with you and during the most magical time of the year, of course. And I know that you have to be super busy this time of year. So I really appreciate your time. I just feel privileged to get to tell your story on the podcast and share more about, what's in over 28 million homes now. I mean, that number is crazy. And on behalf of moms everywhere, thank you for helping little ones act a little bit better around the Christmas season, right?
Self-control is a great value. Yes, it is.
Yes, there's also also the value of that. It's so much more than just the elf, right?
Yes, it is. Yes,
Yeah.
it is. Well,
Thank you, Chanda.
Jennifer, I can't thank you enough for having me. I really am honored here. I love getting the chance to talk about my own mom and being a mom myself.
Yeah.
It's a huge part of who I am too. And so I love your podcast. Congratulations on your own risks that you took. It's a huge accomplishment. So congratulations.
Thank you. I appreciate that so much.